Explorations. Probing global diversification. We travel the world so you don't have to.
She bangs, the monsoon will make you suffer with heat. She bangs, the monsoon will make you beg in defeat.
Explorations.
She looks like a flower, but she stings like a bee. Just like every woman in history.
We travel the world so you don't have to.
This is the monsoon, the reigning force of India. Most want to believe the monsoon will bring gifts of some sort, so they look forward to it and organize celebrations. But in reality, the monsoon can wash out villages and lives in the blink of an eye. Some people start businesses, some start health regimens, some start families. What do they do with the approach of the monsoon? Is there a special energy that the monsoon brings? How do people cope with the force of the monsoon? And what sort of things happen before, during, and after a monsoon? How is the monsoon a big part of life in India? No one ever really knows what the monsoon will bring, just that it will bring something. The anticipation of this is like a wrath or a gift. An author from New Delhi will talk about her favorite classic Bollywood monsoon songs. And a Canadian Buddhist will talk about her adventures with the monsoon. So let's start with the science behind the monsoon with Andrew Yee.
When the sun takes up a higher position over the southern hemisphere between fall equinox and spring equinox, then we have cooler weather. So that gets us into autumn and winter in the northern hemisphere. So we have this season, and one of the major result is that the atmospheric circulation on a very large scale over the whole hemisphere changes. In wintertime, we have a strong Arctic flow of air, and that delivers cold air over the continent. And so for the tropical region, there's very little moisture for them, and that's dry season for them then. Now, half a year later, when the sun is high up in the sky over the northern hemisphere, it really heats up the ground. Air rises. And when the air rises, then something has to replace the air that has just gone up to a higher level in the sky. And so the air comes in from a lower level, and that draws in the moisture from the ocean. So there's a change in wind direction. Now the wind comes from the ocean surface towards the land, and that forms cloud, and eventually, when the clouds cannot hold that much moisture, it's going to rain. And this is persistent over the tropic. I guess the strongest one is the one over the Indian subcontinent. And that's the most famous monsoon season that we know of.
Through Bollywood classics, the monsoon has touched the hearts of people around the globe. Author Madhulika Liddle of New Delhi will discuss her favorite monsoon songs from Bollywood classics. Madhu will also talk about the monsoon and how it is just a part of daily life.
Do people actually prepare for the monsoon ahead of time, or is there not that option?
Not so much preparing themselves for it, but there's a lot of putting things off till after the monsoon. For instance, nobody gets their house painted until the monsoon is well and truly over. Because if you get your house painted before the monsoon, it's there are bound to be leaks, and so your painting will come to no use. So that is one thing that happens. Other than that, not really very much. Everybody just looks forward to the monsoon.
Is there usually a prediction of when the monsoon will hit your area?
Yes. The meteorological department, they keep monitoring it. So actually the entire, the newspapers for every day, once the monsoon is anywhere close, they keep publishing updates, and not just when it's arriving in Delhi, but when it's going to hit the, the southern coast, when it's going to hit Kerala. Before the monsoon, India gets really very hot. So for instance, Delhi till about a week ago had a high of about 46 degrees centigrade. It was horrible. It was vile. You couldn't go out at all. Now, because there are pre-monsoon showers, and it's the temperatures come down to a bearable 37. So
Bearable
that's how-
37. That's funny. I don't think we've ever reached. I think we've reached 40 here once. But and we do live in a very humid area. We have the Great Lakes around here, so it's very humid. But that's amazing. 47.
While on a pilgrimage, Buddhist Carmen had the opportunity to experience the passion of the monsoon. Almost swept away with the allure of India, she tells of her adventures while living among the common people.
It was funny. I was walking along and I had it's just noticeable. All of a sudden, the skies open up. But if you're there long enough, that you feel the air before that. You're kind of like, wow, the monsoon really needs to happen because the air humidity has gotten so thick, you almost cannot breathe. And you're praying for it to rain to break that. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happens. The air just gets very, very thick and still, and then all of a sudden, these clouds move in, and boom, they open up, they dump, and it may only be for half an hour, or it may be for the entire afternoon, or it may be for longer than that. But in the particular area I was in, it was kind of an afternoon event. So I'm walking down the street, and I noticed people were getting off the road, and it was still sunny, and I noticed people were kind of, moving up into higher walking areas and stuff like that. And sure enough, in the split of a moment, the skies opened up, and within minutes, the whole road turned into a foot of rushing water and bags of garbage and bottles and, just screaming along. And if you tried to walk in it, it would be like, you're walking in a rushing river. And so it's like people who were caught in it, like myself, would head off to the sidewalk, which also became quickly covered in water. So you'd head off into somebody's stair, which has already got 20 people standing on it. So you're trying to buy your way in, get me out of the water, and get out under a little bit of an overhang so you're not drenched, and just watch the scene around you where it's just unbelievable. It's unlike changes so quickly. It just moves in so quickly. And I had that experience. I was hiking up on the side of a mountain with a couple of nuns and a couple of monks. And as we were walking along, you could see some clouds moving in, and as locals, I guess you just read what's going on. And they said, we need to get into some cover pretty soon. I was like, what do you mean? It's like comfortable, it's nice, you don't even feel a breeze, And then, within minutes, I'm starting to notice a change, a little bit of a coolness in the air, and it ended up, in this particular case, there were hailstones and snow and thunder and lightning that hit us. And the trail that we were on was like an offshoot trail, and it was used by shepherds, and there were also little caves along that trail. So we ended up scurrying off into the caves and ended up there for a couple of hours. Unfortunately, I had some food with me. I had a thermos with me of hot water, and I ended up, I think I had a package of noodles or something, and I made myself a quickie noodle soup in my thermos cup, and crouched in this little rock overhang where obviously, others had been, shepherds and that, because it looked like they had slept there. It was some hay and remnants of other visitors, let's say. And just hung out there, and so I kind of felt like a little hermit, peering out into the world and watching what was going on in the valley of the hail coming from the sky, and I could see across where the monks and nuns were under there. They found a bigger cave, and we're hanging out there. And when it cleared off, it was like, hey, we started on our path again. especially in the city like Delhi. I remember reading in the paper, they had been experiencing, a heat wave, which is more than 40 degrees Celsius. And it was just really, really hot. And one of the comments was, I guess, in around that area, monsoon is about, late June, early July. So for all of June, it had been so intensely hot. People were dying, animals were dying. When water was getting short, the temperatures were just excruciatingly, unbearable. And I remember seeing in the picture in the paper was this kid playing in this massive, huge puddle on the road. Like the monsoons finally came, and the comment was, the air is a lot cleaner. It's it just took down. The thing is, like, we have the smog index in Toronto, right? Yeah. So when it gets really hot in the summer and humid and all of this is going on, you get the smog index is quite intense as well. So same thing in Delhi. It's just unbearable. And traveling around, if I had to go traveling through there, I have a scarf and I wrap it around, and I even would keep aromatherapy with me as well, like lavender or something. And because you get a lot of these factories spewing out sulfury smells, and I'd put a little dab of that in my scarf and wrap that around my face and just. So definitely the rains would keep. Would definitely clean up the air.
So how did you observe the locals would survive through this? How did they make it a part of their life? How did they just accept it, other than just jumping off the side? Did they work with the monsoon? Did they welcome the monsoon and put up buckets, and then suddenly they had free water? Did they? I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine buckets of water pouring down in my head.
Yeah.
But it's real over there to them, and they accept it.
Yeah.
Is that when they had showers? Like they would just step outside and that's a shower?
I did.
And the water must have been warm too.
That's the thing. If you got caught in it, it wasn't such a crisis. You got wet, and your cloth there was quite thin, especially in the hotter areas, and all of that would dry out very quickly. If you were further north in the mountains, you got the dry air, so you just hang your stuff out, and within hours it would be dry. But what I found with the locals, with any situation, with monsoons or dry weather or adverse weather conditions, it was just accepted as a daily part of life. And there was it never seemed to be a crisis. And, if it was a landslide or if it was a monsoon that created horrendous floods and all of this kind of thing, they're just you never got the feeling that they were in some kind of a crisis, because life just kind of carried on. And if there was any kind of disaster that would happen, let's say a flood as a result of a monsoon, and a village got wiped out, or all of that kind of stuff, there'd be a cloth or a tarp thrown up, and somebody would pull out a pot and, get some water going and invite you in for tea.
A passerby.
A cup of tea, madam, and it's like, wait a minute, you just lost all your possessions, and your house got washed away, and, most likely you might have lost a relative and all of this, but they just step into the next moment.
Really?
And move on. So, my observance, that I would say that would be the most powerful observance in that regard, that, anything that happened to them, even for us, would seem to be a crisis, would seem to be devastating. For them, it was just another part of daily life, and, we have to carry on. We have to, like, I still have some tea here. I'm going to make some tea, and I'll share it. And with a smile. here, it's like, well, there's a tendency to be more dependent. That if we have a crisis, if something is going on, then somebody else needs to take care of it. Mm-hmm. Right? The army needs to move in and take care of this, or the government needs to step in and blah, blah, blah. Whereas the people there would pick up and
have a good
move to higher ground.
And smile while they're doing it.
And smile while they're doing it and offer what they had and share what they had with other people.
That's interesting. So they wouldn't call around, oh, we need help.
Yeah.
Help us now.
Yeah.
Lata Mangeshkar was one of the only voiceover singers for classic Bollywood films. She began singing at an early age to help provide an income for her family. One of the first films she sang for is from 1947.
I believe it was October. I was kind of catching the tail end of it. And then I got what they meant. Because it was like somebody was standing above you with a bucket of water and pouring it. There was no distinct raindrops. It was just it was just a pour of water that came down. And within minutes, sidewalks, you couldn't walk on them, roads, you couldn't drive on them. Everything just became water, and lots of it, and rushing.
And what happens? Is there a big washout? The streets are flooded? You have to run for cover? Is it just an intense downpour?
It's usually a sort of a mix of all of it. You can never tell, and sometimes maybe a week can go by and there won't be any rain at all. So it's intermittent. You just know that the monsoon, between, say, end of June and October, it'll keep raining sometime or the other, in some form or the other, for some duration or the other. So you don't venture out without an umbrella or, with adequate footwear.
Is it possible that sometimes everything would have to stop? Everything would be at a standstill if it's an intense downpour?
Yes, it does. It gets pretty bad in places. Delhi has a bad history of being flooded. So our drainage is just terrible as far as, roads and all are concerned. So often roads get waterlogged and you'll have traffic piling up. And somebody I know had to get a Mercedes car engine changed because it got flooded. So it's pretty bad.
So it does create, obviously, inconveniences. You also hear sometimes people end up dying in like mudslides or whatnot because of the heavy rain. Mm-hmm. Knowing that that's also coming along with the good side of the monsoon, do people have any sort of concern about that, or do they just go about business?
They just go about their business because it's just a part of life. You have to deal with it, and it's better than the heat.
In the movies, I always see the couples get together or they're breaking up. I just think it's so wonderful, the drama that they bring with the monsoon in the films. It's just all suddenly there.
Yes, there's a lot of that in the movies. They sort of romance and monsoon seem to go together in the movies. In real life, I think it's not so much romance, but you talk to any Indian, any North Indian especially, about the monsoon, and the first thing they'll say, chai, samosas, and pakoras. So because as soon as the rain comes, everybody says, oh, the way to celebrate the rain is to have a good cup of hot tea and eat pakoras and hot samosas along with that.
कहता है ये सावन क्या कहता है शाम सवेरे दिल में मेरे तू रहता है कुछ कहती है ये बदली क्या कहती है कुछ कहती है ये बदली
the monsoon had just hit Delhi, and there were these flowers on my balcony. It's a species called Zephyranthus, and it just has to get a few drops of rain, and it blossoms into abundant flowers. So I saw the Zephyranthus lying on my balcony, and there were the fields stretching beyond, which is very odd in Delhi, because in Delhi you don't see fields. Delhi is a concrete jungle. But we are lucky enough to live in a place where there's fields beyond, and there are cows, and it's almost like being on the edge of a village. And it was really so pretty, and I thought I have to do a list of monsoon songs, because Hindi cinema is, again, it still actually does, even though my blog is restricted till about 1970. But even beyond that, Hindi cinema has, it's continued to celebrate the monsoon very vividly. So there was lots of scope there for me.
About the monsoon songs that you chose, I don't remember, unfortunately. I don't have a list in front of me specifically what they were. I've heard them 100 times now. What is there any particular common thread through those songs that sort of identifies the whole package, or are they? I mean, when you listen to them, they're all somewhat similar. The style of music is somewhat similar. Obviously, the lyrics probably give them a lot more meaning, I should say. What was it about these particular songs that maybe set them apart in your mind from others?
They're actually a very mixed bag of songs, and the reasons why I chose them are also equally mixed. So, for instance, there are some songs which I've chosen because the music really appealed to me. So actually the most of the songs towards the end of the post, song number 10, song number 9, those are the ones which I really love for the music. There are some songs which I've chosen for the visual element. So for instance, there's this one song which is Kuch Kehta Hai Ye Sawan, which is basically, it has these two people. The actor is Dharmendra and the actress is Asha Parekh. And they're wandering through fields. And the scenery is beautiful. It's completely monsoon, because the fields are green and there are grey clouds lowering over the place. And there's a, village pond in the background. It really sort of evokes the monsoon. On the other hand, there's a song from this film called Guide, which is Allah Megh De. So which is, it's a sort of preparation for the monsoon, in that it is a plea to God to give rain, because it's just it's the the ultimate in pleading. The plea is it's so fervent and it's so heartfelt. It's really rather pathetic, and in fact the whole thing, the film Guide itself centered very largely around this drought. And about these villagers who are so desperate for water that they sort of adopt this man who is passing through their village and sort of convert him into a saint and tell him that if you fast and if you starve yourself to death, the gods will send rain. So it's an interesting film, but the interesting thing about the song is that it has nothing to do with the actual coming of the rain, but it is a plea for rain. And that is, I thought that really epitomized what happens before the monsoon actually hits India. Because we are all really thirsting for the rain.
I was just going to ask you if there were any other specific songs there that you wanted to talk about.
Okay. Another song which I really like, not just for the music, is this song called O Sajna Barkha Bahar Aayi, which is, I love it for its visual as well. It's sung beautifully, the music is lovely. And the picturization is, it's really sweet because it's set in this village and you see all the little, the nuances of rain. So there's a little, earthen pot lying on the ground which is catching rain which is dripping through a leaky roof. and you have raindrops falling off the edge of a leaf or raindrops falling off a petal. And the heroine, she extends her hand, cupped, to catch water. And there's something very, very sweet about it and very, very rejoicing of the monsoon. Another song which is a particular favorite of mine, and which I think is, again, it reflects, the desperation for the monsoon, and in a good way, because it shows how heartfelt the celebration of the monsoon is this song called Haryala Sawan Dhol Bajata Aaya.
तगिन तगिन गिन गिन रे तक 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 तगिन तगिन गिन गिन रे जग 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 जगिन जगिन गिन गिन रे.
Haryala means green. Sawan is the monsoon. So in fact, Sawan is a word you'll come across a lot in these monsoon songs. Haryala Sawan Dhol Bajata Aaya. Dhol is a drum. It's this double-sided drum. It's like a cylinder which you hang around your neck, and it has two drum heads. And it's one of those very, you sort of grab it and go wang, 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 wang. And it's very celebratory. So in fact, you'll see dhols at weddings, and it's not a couple instrument. It's something you'd celebrate. And this song is all about that the green monsoon has come playing a drum. So it's the sound of the thunder has been equated to a dhol being played, which I thought was really cute. And the entire setting is of a village of farmers and how they're celebrating the coming of the monsoon. They're rejoicing that the monsoon has come. And again, as in guide, in this film also, the film is called Do Bigha Zameen. Bigha is it's a particular measure of land. And the whole film is about this very poor farmer who has just 2 bighas of land. That's a tiny amount. And he ends up having to mortgage that. And when he can't, sort of repay the debt, he has to go to Calcutta to sort of work as a rickshaw puller. And he ends up, it's a very tragic story. And the whole thing centers around the fact that there was famine in his village because the monsoon failed. So it's, again, it ties into the fact that the monsoon is so important, especially in an agrarian society.
हरियाला सावन ढोल बजाता आया दिन तक तक मन के मोर नचाता आया मिट्टी में जान जगाता आया धरती पहनेगी हरी दुनिया बन के दुनिया हो एक अगन बुझी एक अगन लगी मन मगन हुआ एक लगन लगी
How can a monsoon fail? It just doesn't come, or?
It does happen sometimes. In fact, it's unfortunately it is fairly common in places because it may not, you may not have as much rain as usual, and unfortunately, a lot of India is still dependent on the monsoon rather than on irrigation. So there are some areas which are short of water anyway, and for them. The monsoon is actually, there's no other way to irrigate their fields. They have to wait for the monsoon. And sometimes the monsoon is there's just inadequate rain.
So what do people do in those circumstances? Are there incantations that they can use? Do dances? I know it's all nonsense, but do they try in some celebratory way, try to get the monsoon to have more impact?
No, not really. I think, but a lot of prayers happen. I do know that temples are filled, and I've heard of prayers being held on a huge, sort of scale to try and get the monsoon. But that's it.
Yeah.
What else? I read that some places they will hang something, and they have to keep it wet, so when the wind comes through, it'll help cool the air.
Is that the punka or something?
What is this called?
Pankhas. But that is not actually what it was. A pankha is literally a fan. And what the British did was, when they were in India, this was something which is very common. In fact, I saw it of all places in a church just last month in Kerala. In an age of electricity, there was still a pankha in this church. So it's basically a long strip of cloth, which is it's a stiff cloth, which is strung on a long bamboo pole, which stretches across a room, and it's pulled by a string by somebody sitting outside. So you probably have a little boy or a servant or someone sitting outside the room who just pull that string rhythmically all the way through. And because it's a long, large piece of cloth, so it, by the gentle swaying, it cools a good bit of the room. But it's not that effective in the days of electricity.
I know in Canada, in North America, the northern climates, often babies are born in September, so winter seems to be the baby-making time. Is that the case with monsoons?
How much would be 9 months from now?
Well, the monsoon but the monsoon goes on for a while, doesn't it? It's not just a brief burst.
It goes on for about up to 3 to 4 months. So if Delhi gets the monsoon in July, it'll probably go until about October. The last showers will go until October.
Okay, so there's plenty of time for baby making there.
How did they make it a part of their life? Did they work with the monsoon? Did they welcome the monsoon and put up buckets, and then suddenly they had free water? It's hard for me to imagine buckets of water pouring down on my head. Yeah. But it's real over there to them, and they accept it.
Yeah.
Is that when they had showers? Like they would just step outside and that's a shower?
I did.
and the water must have been warm too. That's the thing. If you got caught in it, it wasn't such a crisis. You got wet, and your cloth there was quite thin, especially in the hotter areas, and all of that would dry out very quickly. Mm-hmm. If you were further north in the mountains, you got the dry air, so you just hang your stuff out, and within hours it would be dry. But what I found with the locals, with any situation, with monsoons or dry weather or adverse weather conditions, it was just accepted as a daily part of life. And there was it never seemed to be a crisis. And, if it was a landslide or if it was a monsoon that created horrendous floods and all of this kind of thing, they're just you never got the feeling that they were in some kind of a crisis, mm-hmm. because life just kind of carried on. And if there was any kind of disaster that would happen, let's say a flood as a result of a monsoon, and a village got wiped out, or all of that kind of stuff, there'd be a cloth or a tarp thrown up, and somebody would pull out a pot and get some water going, and invite you in for tea. A passerby.
Yeah, a cup of tea, madam, and he's like, wait a minute, you just lost all your possessions, and your house got washed away, and, most likely you might have lost a relative and all of this, but they just step into the next moment.
Really?
And move on. So,
That's interesting.
My observance, that I would say that would be the most powerful observance in that regard, that anything that happened to them, even for us, would seem to be a crisis, would seem to be devastating.
Mm-hmm.
For them, it was just another part of daily life, and we have to carry on. We have to, I still have some tea here, I'm going to make some tea and I'll share it, and with a smile. Here, it's like, there's a tendency to be more dependent. That if we have a crisis, if something is going on, then somebody else needs to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The army needs to move in and take care of this, or the government needs to step in and blah, blah, blah. Whereas the people there would pick up and
have a good
move to higher ground.
And smile while they're doing it.
And smile while they're doing it, and offer what they had and share what they had with other people.
That's interesting. So they wouldn't call around, we need help.
Yeah.
Help us now.
Yeah. It would be kind of hard to pinpoint that. Was there a flood of
or frogs.
Butterflies or frogs? Yes, frogs. Now there. There's one. Yeah. There's
So after the monsoon, after a heavy monsoon, which could last maybe 5 minutes, half hour, whatever, and afterwards there would be a frogs every time, or just maybe once in a while you'd really notice the frogs?
Well, because it was something that would carry on for a period of time, every day, okay, so you're going to get more of the amphibious varieties that are flourishing, right, and procreating, and it's their time. So there would be, like a period of time, there would be more of these critters around. You would notice them around, big bullfrog kind of creatures and toads and all of this, and moving around. And the one funny thing that happened was, so I've rented a flat with another lady, and our flat is a few steps up from the road. So even if it rained, we weren't getting flooded out like a lot of other people were. Like the backyard would look like a big giant rice paddy. Everything would just be soggy wet. And, you'd see, blip, blip, you'd see things going on out there, and mosquitoes and this kind of thing. And one day, it's like these rains had gone on. I was there for a little over a month, so better part of that month. And I decided, I'm going to, just doing some daily sweep out kind of thing, but I was doing it a little bit more intense. And I moved one of the mats near the door. And I'm looking, I was like, what is that? And I went to sweep it, and then it moved. And I was like, ew, what is this, And here there were 2 big bullfrogs and 3 tiny frogs. It was like mom, pop, and babies, It's like, and I tried to push them out the door, and they wouldn't go, So anyway, it's like, hey, frogs live outdoors, they should be outdoors. So I gently, kind of swept them out the door, and I don't know to this day how they got in, but the next day they were back. It's like too wet out there for frogs.
Really?
It's like they want to be in higher ground too. But yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. It was move the mat and these blinking eyes at me, It
must have been really warm. Wow.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine.
Well, the monsoon can make quite an impact on the people of India. It's amazing how the monsoon can be weaved into even the smallest part of a classic film. Whether it be through romance, drought, or other catastrophe, everyone has acquired a certain respect or admirational passion for the monsoon. Thank you to Andrew Yee of Toronto for the science of the monsoon. Special thanks to wandering Buddhist on a mission, Carmen for her beautiful story of her encounter with the monsoon while on a pilgrimage in India. Warm thank you to author Madhulika Liddle of New Delhi for sharing her favorite monsoon songs. She can be found at madhulikaliddle.com. And most appreciation to indiavideo.org for their amazing audio and visual effects. And as always, thank you to you, our audience, for your support and love. We encourage your input on this show so you don't have to set a foot outside of your realm of existence. Challenge us. Thanks to my co-host Dzintars Cers. I'm Mimi Hilger. You can find us at dzintarscers.com.